So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hi, villains, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And we're back to you again with a Brentford preview. Paddy's looking resplendent as normal. I have just come in after a match, so I do apologise for the cut of my jib. I'm not like Paddy. I just jumped straight on the computer here. I couldn't be waiting around in my hair with hair and makeup. There's nothing worse, and there's nothing that makes me want to not do a podcast than having my entourage want to powder my face beforehand. But Paddy, how are you getting on?
I'm grand. I just threw my entourage out of the room so I could sit down and have a chat with you.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've got Brentford at the weekend, Paddy.
We have.
I suppose this was one that we had both earmarked. I suppose when the fixtures came out, this is one we would go to, and we would try and get to see live. But just the way things have gone this side and the way things have gone the other side of the water, it's probably just not viable just at this very moment to get over there, just with various different things that are going on at the moment. So we will, as always, be watching in spirit and hoping that anybody who gets a chance to get a ticket and go to this game has the time of their lives.
Of course. Yeah, a lot of things stacked up against us, I think, on this one. But yeah, I think safety first for now and just give another couple of weeks and let things settle down. That and the price of flights wasn't too kind either. So
Michael O'Leary has to make back his money somehow.
Well, he won't be getting any money off me this weekend anyway, that's for sure.
No. He might actually bring back that threat that he had where he said that he's going to charge people to go to the Jacks. So you were going to have to you were going to have to prepay how many times you thought you need to go to the Jacks, and then it wouldn't put it past him to do that. But anyway, this isn't the air travel podcast as always. This is not the air travel podcast of Paul McGrath or whatever. I'm way too tired to come up with a funny quip for that one. I'm gonna quit when I'm ahead on that one, okay? And post production won't be able to edit that one out either. But we do have Brentford, as I say. We will get onto that in a moment because I think it would be remiss. We weren't able to do a team sheet tantrum. We weren't able to do a post-game review, all 100% my fault last night due to work commitments. But Paddy, we played Barrow last night and we played with a very, very changed team. Talk to me about it. Like, I think fantastic night, I think, for everyone involved.
Yeah. I think even for Barrow, it was a fantastic night to get a Premier League team down there, and the good old atmosphere and good old slagging match. And I think Matty Target got the brunt of it from early on, which was a bit of fun. But look, it could be all in vain now that we know that we're going to play Chelsea in the next round. But to go out and score 6 goals is good for confidence. I think the most important thing to come out of it for me yesterday was the game time for the likes of Matt Target, Freddie Gilbert, Tuanzebe, Courtney House, Jed Steer, Conor Horahan, Philogene Bidace, and Carney Chukwuemeka. The rest of them, well, obviously we'll get to Cameron Archer in a while, but for the rest of them, they were just topping up what they had. But yes, we obviously had a couple of stars of the show, and where Ngazi turned into Ronaldo for long periods of the game. And then we had our new hero of Cameron Archer, who managed to score a hat-trick, and what a fine hat-trick it was too.
Yeah. Just on the Chelsea piece, Paddy, we're unbeaten. Chelsea haven't beaten us since the 21st of June 2020. So we're in the ascendancy against Chelsea, and we're going to smash 6 past them again in the. We're not only just going to smash 6 past them again in the Champions League. There we go. In the League Cup, we're going to smash 6 past them again after after the international break as well. So positivity is an all-time high for me at the moment, and it's because I'm delirious with tiredness. But that's okay because it makes for good listening. But you're dead right. No, you mentioned I think the best thing about last night was seeing people get game time that we felt needed game time. Target was there. Got to see Two and Zabia and House play together. I thought that there was one or two times that they were a small bit shaky. I thought the two of them at the start, but they didn't leave any massive chances in. I think Jed Steer only had one save to make, and it was a very good save actually from a snapshot from the edge of the area. Then we have Freddie Gilbert, who got absolutely calved in an awful tackle by a fellow by the name of Brow. I don't know how to pronounce it. Brough. I think they were pronouncing it Bruff. Actually, I don't know what they were pronouncing because I watched the game with the sound off. So it was it was a difficult one for me to watch. I was kind of watching out of one eye while I was looking at the computer screen the other. So it was, but yeah, it was a horror tackle. He had two nibbles at him. He went high at the start and then he just dived in. And I thought Freddie could have been in difficulty, but he got himself up, brushed himself off. I think at that stage, Dean Smith saw it and said, look, we're 6-0 up. Hayden Lindley, get him off, come on. And it was great to see him get a run as well. And I thought it was interesting to see him get a run at right back, considering that he's played in that defensive stopper type midfielder in for the under-18s last year and into the Premier League 2 team this year. Midfield as well. It was nice to see Conor Horan have the armband. Who knows whether it's going to be his swan song. See what they did there, considering he played with Swansea last year and you'd be expecting him to go back. And we saw Carney playing in there as well, obviously replaced by his brother Caleb, who I thought had something when he came on. I was actually impressed with his movement when he came on. Very much so. And they pushed Cameron Archer out onto the left as well to give him an opportunity to spearhead the attack, which I thought was really, really interesting, considering Archer only had 2 at that stage, I think. I think he only had 2 goals at that stage. But I thought for me, Amar Ghazi, absolutely pick of the bunch. He should have been as well. He's in and around the Dutch squad. These guys cost nothing. They're all just thrown together, borderline Sunday League team, to be honest with you. But they gave it their all. And another man I want to mention as well, I thought was absolutely fantastic, and I'm really excited about him, and it's no surprise. Jayden Philogene-Bidace playing at that level, he's just got so much enthusiasm for the game. You just see it by him. He chases everything, and what he did to win back the ball after Archer lost it for Archer's 3rd goal was absolutely fantastic, and I can see him having a big say in this first team as the year goes on.
I hope so. I absolutely do hope so. Before we move on from this, I'd like to call out Anwar El Ghazi for taking the piss with that penalty. That didn't impress me at all. I thought there was no need for it.
Why, if he did that against United, would you have said there was no need
absolutely
for it?
Fine. Absolutely fine.
But we were 1-0 up at that stage.
He'll never do it agained United, and that's the problem. So you treat everybody equally.
Don't feel sorry for Barrow. I 100%. No. He didn't do anything wrong.
Not having it. If you haven't got the balls to stand up against who did he score one at the weekend? Newcastle. He wouldn't do it against Newcastle. Don't do it against Barrow. But that's just me being old school.
You can't say he wouldn't do it against Newcastle.
Like when you're watching Sunday League and the goalkeeper wants to come up and take a penalty. No, get back in your box and shut up.
Completely different. Anyway, we're not going to have an argument over it. You can't say he's never taken a penalty for anyone else other than Aston Villa. He's never missed a penalty in his career for anyone else. You can't say he wouldn't do it against Newcastle United until he does it and misses it, and then we can criticize the living shit out of him all we want.
I'll tell you, a more athletic goalkeeper would have hit the ground and still had time to save that last night. So he was very lucky too.
Ifs and buts, he didn't save it. So
I know that.
It's completely it's an unquantifiable metric. I think it's brilliant, and I want him to do it every single time he takes a penalty. And it just shows the great confidence. He didn't want to play it. No, I'm having a crack off you here. Of course, I'm joking. But he didn't want to play in that game last night. He just wanted to get it over and done with. You could see he was sour coming off because he had to play for so long, and you could see it in his face. And the commentators picked up on it, and they said, I was actually listening to this stage. The commentators picked up on it, and they said, oh, look at him. He put in a professional shift or whatever, and things were, I think they said something like that, put in a professional shift, and there's, he was can't remember what way they phrased it, but they put it that he was doing his job for the team. There's no way he expected to be playing that game, considering they were resting 9 of 11 starters or whatever the case was. He was actually the only one that played from the weekend.
He's not a guaranteed starter anymore, so
no. And I think I think that just goes to show to me that probably Leon Bailey is back for the weekend. Probably Ollie Watkins is back for the weekend, and Anwar El Ghazi was given this opportunity to cement his place in the team.
Yeah, and he scored the goals obviously last night and at the weekend, but his performances haven't been up to scratch for me for the first couple of games.
Yeah.
But I thought last night he drifted inside. He played a couple of through balls, which he never does. And I hope when he does get an opportunity again, that's the kind of football we see him play, because it's much better to watch than sulking out in the wing looking for the ball.
Yeah, and that's true. He hasn't put together a full 90 minutes for Aston Villa so far. So look, there's no harm, and I think, to be honest with you, he's a confidence player. So I think Dean Smith played him with that in mind. We've said it before. If El Ghazi's going to have a worldie of a game by the first 5-10 minutes of a game, and having that against Barrow, scoring 2 goals, albeit one of them being a penalty, but the other goal was was a nice goal as well. And look, it's all part of the confidence piece for El Ghazi. He gets off after 58 minutes, I think it was. He barely broke sweat. He barely broke sweat for the whole game. But then again, you'd expect him not to, because he's a fully formed professional footballer. And some of those guys, as I say, from Barrow, were being brought up from non-league football, more or less, over the last game. But yeah, just on the penalty, cheeky from him. I was just having a crack off you there to try and not
good enough. But I don't like people disrespecting anybody that is perceived to be weaker than them. It's not honest, not fair. That's just my opinion. That's my way of looking at it.
I'll tell you a little story on that as well. And this is one that the podcast listeners may tune out on. Gaelic football here in Ireland years ago. I think it was like 2004, 2005. I wasn't even playing. I was only a spectator at it. But my local club had won the county Junior B, which is the lowest grade of all. It's the lowest grade of all. It's literally, it's as amateur can be. And we'd won our county championship, and we ended up playing the Kerry County champions. They had a wedding the night before, the wedding on the Friday before, and a wedding on the Saturday before, and we played them on a Sunday morning. So it's a small town that had 2 weddings one day after the other. They couldn't get the game moved. So we were playing against a team that were doubly hungover, and we were absolutely smashing them. And in Gaelic football, you can catch the ball. It's basically all goalkeepers playing around the field, just in case you don't know what it is. You can catch the ball, you can kick it over the bar. But the ball came in, and it's so taboo to do anything, quote unquote, soccer style in the game. The ball comes in, and one of our lads hits a peach of a diving header at the back post, and it goes in, and their whole team erupted and absolutely kicked the living daylights out of your man inside the goals. It was the ultimate sign of disrespect. He could have just tapped it in with his foot, but he's sliding diving header at the back post, and we were up by about 30 points, I'd say, at that stage. But our manager marched him into the dressing room afterwards and made him apologize and everything. Took him off, first of all, made him wait in the sideline, took him in and made him apologize. Sure, our man was black and blue. They absolutely kicked him. They absolutely destroyed him. But yeah, so it's kind of a karma thing, isn't it, that you don't kind of show about when you're doing something like that, especially when the golfing class is so big. But that wasn't the defining moment. As I say, Cameron Archer coming of age, first time playing for the seniors, debutant, scoring a hat trick, all those things that were flashing up on screen. First person to score brace in their first game for Aston Villa, an X amount, the youngest person ever to score for Aston Villa, like all these things, the second youngest person ever to score for Aston Villa, and Paddy, if you were to ask the majority of people to name who do you think is going to be the next striker from Aston Villa's academy to break through and to have a headline performance, nobody would have said Cameron Archer.
No. And this is obviously something that's gone on a long time that we haven't set up and made notes of, because we would have said probably Louis Barry and Brad Young, amongst others. And now we have this guy who's a natural born finisher. Very good footballer, has so much in the tank there. So there he is propping up and scoring a hat-trick on his debut, and it's incredible. I know the standard of opposition will be what everybody throws back at you, but that doesn't matter. You're making your debut. You're coming up from the underage setup, and you're scoring 3 goals. Fair play to him. Keep it up, kid, because there's going to be opportunities there, and if he's still part of the squad, he'll get them.
Yeah, he was on loan last year at Solihull Moors. He played 26 games, scored 4 goals. As an 18-year-old kid. So, he's 19. He doesn't turn 20 until December. So, he's really only 19 and a half. So, played more or less a full season with Solihull Moors at 18 years of age, on loan, scoring 4 goals. What I liked about Cameron Archer was 2 things. You mentioned his finishing. His finish for the first one was absolutely exquisite. It just comes back to him. We see it an awful lot. People sky us into the stand. I think one of the Barrow guys did it and broke the light. Remember that to have the light fixed. But Cameron Archer got over. The technique was perfect in the back of the net. Second goal, gets 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper and chips him. That's a confident man. And then the third one, yes, he lost the ball. Philogene Bades won it back. Philogene Bades' pass to him was brilliant. I think it went in between 2 players. It was a cut back to 2 players. And yes, he was there, but he had to absolutely drill it into the bottom of the net because he had people converging on him. So that natural ability to strike the ball is there. It certainly is. Second thing I like about him is his after-match interview was actually really quaint and nice. I'm a real sucker for one of these guys who comes in there and doesn't want to act the Billy big man in that interview and doesn't give the canned cliche stuff. He was like a child. He goes, I don't even remember the goals. I'm sorry, it happened so fast. I don't really remember the goals. I just really enjoyed scoring them. And then you see him in social media after when Danny Ings says, well done, Cameron Archer. He goes, thanks very much, Ingsy. You have to teach me how to do that bicycle kick. So he seems like a real level-headed kid. And then the last piece that I love about him is he looks stocky enough to play in the Premier League. He's not spindly. Remember when Gabriel Bonhor broke on the scene? He wasn't the big muscular player that he was 2 or 3 years later. Yeah. Cameron Archer has he looks strong. He looks built, and he looks he's not a giant. I'd say if I was to put a height in him, I'd say he's only 5'10", but looks like he's able to take the physical rough and tumble of the Premier League.
Yeah, and it was physical out there last night, and it was a rough and tumble, and there was times when I thought the referee had lost the game. He letting tackles go that were absolutely ridiculous, and there was one particular one, the fella came through the back in Nakamba, and Nakamba lands on the ball, and he gives a free kick for a handball, and you're just like, what the fuck? Anyway. Great to see him step up to the plate. Love to see him be involved over the course of the season. God knows where we're going to be at as time goes on, but we may need him, or we may just need to put him in there and see what he's worth at that level.
We may need him, is right, because it looks like our £21 million striker Wesley is going back to familiar pastures to Club Brugge, and we spoke about this via text last night. Myself and Paddy don't always agree on things, just to let you know, but we never fall out. We just agree not to disagree sometimes. And he's gone back to Club Brugge, Paddy, and you felt it was a small bit of a strange move, I suppose, given what we've invested in him, and I suppose the league that Villa are playing in, to go back to Club Brugge. Do you think that's a step back for him, as I say?
The more I think about it, it probably makes sense. At the time, I was a bit scratching my head, going that just, well, we don't know who signed him. Bear in mind when he was signed and who was in charge of signings and whatever. But I know if I was managing a team at that level of the game, to have it on my CV that a £21 million striker failed me, or 20 million, whatever he was, failed under my watch, or never got back from fitness, or, all those kind of things were going through my head last night. But look, if he goes back to Bruges, gets his momentum back, gets his fitness back, works on a lot of aspects of his game, and most of all overcomes that injury, it'll probably be a good move for him.
Yeah, Club Brugge won the Jupiler League, I think it's called, but it's been rebranded. Rebranded now again, I think, to just something like League One, or the first Belgian division, or something like that. But they won it anyway. They won the top division in Belgium last year. They're going to be playing in European competition this season.
Yeah.
unless
Oh,
they've been
good for
knocked out.
him. Yeah.
Oh, which would be great for him. But I think the biggest reason he's gone back to Club Brugge is, if you remember, and this, I'm going to preface this with, this is 100% my memory of an article that I read on Wesley. And this is not anything that I know about him. No one has told me this about him. It's an article I read about him. Wesley's upbringing was pretty difficult. His father passing away, him, needing treatment, I think, because of some issues with his legs, not playing soccer until he was a young age, having to work, I think, making nails or screws or something like that before, and tried to play football at the same time, and then having this meteoric rise. And I remember reading that he had, because he had to be thrown into the limelight as being basically the man of the house at such a young age, that his education suffered, and he didn't have much of an education. And what I'm trying to get at here is that, not only just not having an education, but sometimes having an emotional education from that point of view of just having to be such a grown up at such a young age. When you do reach the pinnacle of sport like that, when he's playing and he gets such a bad injury, the mental kind of side of things and trying to get back to that can be really, really tough. And I know he did a lot of his rehab in Brazil, but now he's come back to Aston Villa, and there's two 30 million pound strikers in his way. So from the psychological point of view, I think here, sending him to a club he's familiar with, sending him to surroundings he's familiar with, will allow him to ease himself back in. We've all heard that certain players and not players, but certain sports, you have a thing called the yips, specifically within, darts or in, singular sports. And, I think it's a really shrewd move from Aston Villa, of sending him there. Once again, I'm not prefacing this that I know anything about Wesley. I just remember reading something like that. So from that point of view, and from player welfare, and from a wellness side of things, that's the perfect place for me, I think, to send him into a place of familiarity, to be able to keep an eye on him. He'll know everything he's doing there. The acclimatization for him would be short. And he'll just be able to concentrate and get back to be the best damn player that he can be, because that's what he wants to be, and that's the best thing for him too. And look, we'll reap the rewards if he comes back. And if he doesn't come back the same player, and let's just say Club Brugge say, hey, we'll give you 15 million for him, and we have to cut our losses on it, at least we're doing the right thing by the player too, because by all accounts, everybody likes him. He's a nice kid, and that he's somebody that fits in from a culture point of view with the team.
Yeah, and let's face it, like, we were all fairly bitter when the injury occurred.
Big style.
How it occurred, and the fact that it went unpunished by a celebrity referee and 3 celebrity referees watching up in the gods, and after the fact was never punished by Despicable Me. So he's come back, as you said, 230 million strikers in front of him. He headbutted a guy, well, if you want to call it that, that's what he was done for a few weeks ago. So I think he's feeling a bit bitter and a bit hard done by himself. So there's a bit of a long road for him to recover. And one thing, he's still a very young man. He's also a father. He's so much responsibility and so much going on in his life that, you have to make some kind of allowances for him. But look, it's probably the best for him. We don't know how he's been getting on with training. We can only judge on what we saw in that match. And you could see his head wasn't in the right place when he was playing against Stoke that day.
Yeah, he's I that's another thing as well. Yeah, like, he had to grow up really, really quickly. He had a child of 14, had another one at 16, and he worked at 16. He worked in a factory sorting screws to support his family, and then this comes. Look, this guy is worth investing in, I think. He's worth investing in from a personal point of view. People see that around the club. Yeah, we give him we like, not us, but football fans will give him stick and will say crap things about him and stuff like that, because maybe out of sight, out of mind. Aston Villa have progressed on from the club they were. He still hasn't shown that he's wiped off the stain of that season where we were poor in the Premier League, whereas people like McGinn, people like Mings, people like you go on through all those players that went on the next season to play in that team that were so exciting, even though we couldn't get into stadia. He wasn't part of that team, so people still remember him as the tail end of that season when things weren't going great for Aston Villa, and we stay up by goal difference or a point or whatever it is. I can't even remember. Stay up by VAR on the last day. So I don't think that's fair on Wesley. He may turn out not to be very good, and that's okay too. but I'm talking about from a moralistic point of view, and I suppose looking at the full picture and not looking at it as an Aston Villa fan or a football fan, where you might you might just have an irrational dislike towards a player. I think from the moralistic and personal point of view, there's a lot more goes on with somebody like that. His backstory is absolutely amazing, and I'd love for him to come good at Aston Villa. He's only 24 years of age. He won't be 25 until November. So, he still has a lot of tread in the tires yet. And hopefully we get him back in his prime at 25 years of age, and he can contribute to this team, because we don't have a lot of people over 6'3" people in our team, never mind strikers. So
now that we have eight players out on loan, do we have to do a separate podcast for our loan roundup every week now?
Absolutely, Paddy. Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to get you. Jesus, we're going to have to get you some frequent flyer miles now, flying back and forth to Bruges to be able to watch Wesley. Bruges is lovely.
We're
this
just
time
getting
of
to
year,
Villa
Paddy.
Park now to watch everybody else. That'll be the most important thing this year.
Exactly. And lest we forget as well, he scored 30. He had a 1-3 record when he was with Bruges. He was with Bruges for 3 years, played 107 games, scored 32 league goals. That's not a bad record as well. And we're talking, that was when he was between the ages of 19 and 22.
Absolutely.
If we had a 19-year-old striker that had a 1-3 record, or if we had a 22-year-old striker that had a 1-3 record, we would be swinging from the rafters and chanting his name and saying, "Feck off, Man City! Your 100 million is not worth anything to us." So a lot of context in that. A lot of context.
Yeah.
I know some people won't agree with it, and that's cool. But this is the side of the fence I sit at. Anyway. But wish him all the best, and I have full confidence that he's going to tear it up out in Bruges, because he will have learned an awful lot here in Aston Villa, and he's going to be able to put it into into practice out there as well.
Yeah.
We're talking 26 minutes in Brentford preview, Paddy, and we haven't even spoken about Aston Villa versus Brentford. What's new, I suppose? What's new?
That's why people listen to us, Neil.
That's why people listen to us, because we like to listen to ourselves talk about everything other than the topic. So let's have a little chat about it, Paddy. What way do you think this game is going to go at the weekend? I have a small little tactical analysis piece done in a moment, but what way do you feel it's going to go at the weekend? I suppose start off. Do you think there's going to be any changes to the team? Do you think we're going to see any radical changes from Newcastle?
I guess that depends on who's fit. If Leon Bailey is fit, sure. if he's had any game time behind closed doors or anything this week, God knows what they're at this stage. And the same applies to Ollie Watkins. Probably the two of them don't come back in from the start. Although I would like to see Watkins if he's fit enough to start, because it may open things up for us having him in there. It also, with regards to the game itself, it depends which Brentford turn up. Will it be the high octane game that they put against Arsenal, or will they bore the pants off us like they did against Crystal Palace? We just don't know what way they're going to line up to do that. But look, they've had a good start to the season. They're 4 points on the board already. They're the better side of the three that came up, in my opinion. And it's going to be a tough game, no matter what they decide to do. Personally, I hope we get the one that turned up against Crystal Palace, because I'm a little bit worried about how our defence would react to that high press. And do we turn to a long ball straight away from Emi Martinez? But look, we'll find out that on the day, and that's out of our hands. So it'll just come down to what team Dean Smith puts out there, and there probably won't be too many changes. But I would like to see Ollie Watkins back in, if at all possible.
I can't disagree with that. But I think if Bailey is fit, I think we see Bailey obviously off the bench. Be interesting to see if Ollie Watkins comes in, because if Ollie Watkins comes in, really interesting to see where the hell he plays. Who gets dropped? Bad and all as we were against Watford, we weren't world beaters, or we didn't shoot the lights out against Newcastle. We had 2 shots on target. We scored both of them. One of them was a penalty. The other one was a bicycle kick. do we take out Anwar Ghazi after scoring 3 goals in 2 games? Granted that 2 of them were penalties and 2 of them were against the lowest league, probably one of the lowest teams in the lowest league. You know, what do we do in that instance? Do we drop Buendia? Buendia has been the worst performing of those 3 probably over the course of the first 2 games. It's going to be really interesting. It's going to be an interesting team sheet tantrum, that's for sure.
Well, I think it will be the latter of what you said there. I think it will be Buendia getting a kick up the arse, because he hasn't been the Emily Buendia that we've seen with Norwich. Now maybe he is finding his feet, and you know, he was away in international duty and maybe hasn't got a full preseason behind him. So there's a whole lot of mitigating factors that could be there. But the long and short of it is, he hasn't been great since he come in. So for me, it would be him that was bombed out.
Brentford also as well played in the League Cup, and they went 1-0 down to Forest Green. They went 1-0 down to Forest Green, but look, you know, you can't really read too much into that. When you look at the team that they had out, they didn't really have any. They had Ethan Pinnock played. Janela played in midfield. Apart from that, you know, they brought on Canos, Ayer, Onyeka, and Buemo all came on. They probably needed to bring them on to kind of rescue the game slightly, I think, because they went 1-0 down, obviously, after 8. Well, not obviously after 8 minutes, but they went down 1-0 after 8 minutes. They had to bring in Buemo to get on, and he got the second goal. He's a nice player, a really good player. And I know that Dean Smith mentioned, I know it was mentioned in the same breath as him, if Brentford didn't get promoted, that some that were Premier League teams looking at him. I'd be surprised if Dean Smith wasn't, because he's a nice player. It's going to be really interesting because Thomas Frank is the disciple of Dean Smith. Like,
yeah,
he's from the same coaching tree. He was brought in. Dean Smith brought him in, and Dean Smith is reportedly looking to bring in a Thomas Frank type character from the continent to coach underneath him again. You know, to replace, be it Richard Kelly or John Terry.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I saw it in a couple of places that Brentford haven't missed Dean Smith, you know, since they hired Thomas Frank. And why would they, considering it's the same? You know, it's continuity. Thomas Frank's played under or coached under Dean Smith. And yes, he had his own wrinkles. Don't get me wrong. He's brought in a lot of good things into the team. He's brought in a lot of good tactical pieces. And he's a very good manager in his own right. But it's going to be interesting to see Thomas Frank versus Dean Smith, you know, because Dean Smith.
I think so too. And you know, when we spoke about it early on, and the two of us wanted to go to that game, that was my motivation. There's a whole lot going on with this fixture, and you know, I think we probably will see, for that reason, we will see the high intensity, high pressing performance that they had against Arsenal. It's hard not to like Brentford. It's hard not to like Thomas Frank, you know, bearing in mind what they've done and how they got up there with a limited enough budget in a very small stadium. Even a new stadium is very small, and you know, the capacity is only just over 20,000, I think. But they come up playing decent football. You know, they're on the crest of a wave, having beaten Arsenal 2-0. They also beat Valencia in a pre-season friendly, who are no mugs themselves. And as you said, they couldn't read too much into what they did last night, same as ourselves, winning against non-league opposition. Forest Green are pretty low down the league as it is. So yeah, it has the potential to be a dinger, and it was one I kind of earmarked as probably you'd see live on the telly for many reasons. But with Brentford being on first match of the season, that's probably why it's not.
Yeah. It's there's lots of wrinkles in it. There's lots of things that we'll be looking forward to. Arguably, some people will say that the Ollie Watkins money has helped to build the Brentford promotion charge of last season. Yeah. You know, it's allowed them to invest in other areas. I don't have their transfer history up here in front of me, but obviously we have their most expensive player of all time. And it would be great for him to get back in the field. Does Dean Smith start him? You know, if that is the case, does he bring him on? You know, there's a lots of things there. It's not just Dean Smith, it's Ollie Watkins. There's a couple of things in this. And I'm really excited to see the outcome of this. And we mentioned about tactics there a moment ago, Paddy, as well. Let's have a look at a little something I put together here. Once again, it's just very, very simple piece wanted to see how they set up. So once again, on my positioning maps, I think they're very, very important to give you a key, and they give you an indicator into the way a team plays and the way a team sets up, because, you know, you talk about Brentford being, you know, they change formations. They play 3 at the back sometimes, they play 4 at the back sometimes, and you know, this is their positioning map against Crystal Palace at the weekend. And we can see here that they had it's obviously a 4 at the back, and call it a 3 in midfield. It's not. It's a 4 in the back. 4-2-3-1. That's the way it was played. You know, they played Buemo up top. They had Ivan Toney off him. They loaded the far side against. Was it against Ward? I think it was. Yes, it was. It was against Ward, the full back, and they loaded that side over there with 15, who was Onyeka and Canos. Stayed over that side, obviously, and then they had. It's actually really interesting to see how far forward Christian Ayer came there. So arguably you could say it was 3 at the back. To this, where they actually lined up, it was 4 at the back, playing Christian Ayer as a right-sided defender. But you know, Rico Henry creeping up on the left-hand side there as well. They really kind of left him on an island. Obviously, 6 and 27 inside there are Janlet and Norgard. So I would expect Onyeka not to be anywhere near as far forward there. Number 15 that we can see, I would expect him to be not anywhere near as far forward. I would expect him to probably come in to be a small bit more central against Aston Villa and try and crowd out the middle of midfield and break through Canos on the right hand side. And I think that's really how they're going to play. I think they will set up something similar to this as well and overload one side of the field, because, hey, Paddy, guess what? As we know, any team that's not expected to beat Aston Villa, what do they just do? They overload one side of the field and they switch the play at pace. That's what happens, and Villa can't cope with it. Or they haven't been able to cope with it historically.
And like you mentioned, Christopher Ayer there, I think he's been a fantastic signing from them. I know Christopher Ayer very, very well from his time at Celtic, and watching him, he offers so much defensively and in attack, and he has the ability to switch that, you know, that back 3 into a back 4 very quickly, and he can play right full. He could probably play central defensive midfielder and at centre half. He's a big, big guy. So he's been a great signing for him. A couple of weak links there. Well, specifically one, I think we could get at Janssen. No great love for him from his time at Leeds, and Pinnock, probably not the finished article either. So I would see that as where we could get at them, and the best way we could get at them is by having Watkins and Ings available to us, and I think that would be the telltale of what happens this weekend.
Let's take a look at how Aston Villa set up at the weekend, just in comparison to this. So I've just done a little overlay once again. So here we have the Aston Villa team coming in here in red. We can obviously see that the way that they set up, there is going to be a massively crowded midfield if we play the way we did. We're obviously going to need to shuffle left slightly, considering the fact that they overload that right-hand side. Their right-hand side, our left-hand side, just like Watford did. I think Jacob Ramsey will be deployed a bit further back. He played in the 8th position yet last week. Potentially he's played as an extra pivot to create a double pivot with McGinn coming further in central, and with Buendia. This is another reason why I think potentially he'll start with Buendia and maybe won't, if it is Ings and Ings and Watkins to start. I think Watkins starts out on the left in place of El Ghazi there, and we have a go at Ayer cutting in onto Pontus Janssen. I think that might be a nice avenue to go through there. Canos in front of Ayer. On the other side, you have Rico Henry in front of Pinnock. I just think Rico Henry is an actual defender as well. You know, so getting down the side of Ayer, who, yes, he is good, and he cost them a lot of money when he came down from Celtic, relatively speaking. You know, you can still get him turned. You could get it, like he's a defender in the Scottish Premier League. He drifted in and out of games because he wasn't being challenged. And to me, while he was a good defender, you can't turn that on, you can't turn that off. And I'd like to see him try and drift out of a game with Ollie Watkins snapping at his heels as well. So I don't think Watkins starts at the weekend. I think he goes with the exact same things, the same 11. I'm not going to be spitting fire if that is the case, if he does do that. But I think that the avenues that we could bring on Watkins right wing, we could bring on Watkins up top instead of Ings, give him a break, bring on Liam Bailey maybe left wing. I think there is vast opportunities down that left wing. If they are going to overload it and try and attack us there, I think you hammer the hammer. And you set a player up high like Austin McPhee had, Philogene Bides and El Ghazi doing. You set a player up high and you make them have to pull out of their formation that they want to play. So hammer the hammer on that side would be my advice. And looking at the way we set up, who's going to be the most pivotal man in the whole team once again? Douglas Luiz. Absolutely going to be pivotal in this. He's going to have to take Ivan Toney or Brian Mbuema, who's putting off the two centre halves. If they are going to play this overload formation, our two centre halves have to be pretty free to move around. Specifically, Mings has to be pretty free to pick up that. Konza has to be pretty free to maybe shuffle more into the centre. And Douglas Luiz has to be pivotal there in that middle of midfield position so that he can move back and forth, cover those guys, close the gap in between them if the gap gets too big, and basically just do a load of donkey and unseen work. He's going to have to. It's just going to have to.
Yeah, that's exactly where I see him. As you're looking at it there, where the number 17 is, I see him dropping into that position to effectively be a tree, a short tree, not a wide tree. So, just to compact that and not let them run at us really, which is where they're at the most dangerous. But I think this high press is going to be a very telling thing. If they do it, I think we'll struggle. I worry about quick balls out to Mings and having a little bit of time to think, not having the time to think about it, I should say. So look, we'll probably see Ashley Young back there as well for the old head as well. So yeah, there's very little to worry about, I think, from that end of the pitch. But I think it all hinges on the availability of Bailey and Watkins for me. And just to change it up ever so slightly. And as you say, it probably won't be from the start. They're not going to put those boys straight back in. With the exception of Watkins. Watkins is one of those players who can be, I would imagine, can be out for a couple of weeks and come in and play up there. It's just who he is. Leon Bailey with a hamstring injury, probably need to be a little bit more careful. And what's the famous phrase that Dean Smith manages load? So they'll be managing his load, I'm sure, of how many minutes he plays. So realistically, if needed, we'd probably see him for half an hour. But hopefully the game is over and we're ahead by that stage, and we might need to give him another couple of weeks off going into the international break.
Hopefully so. I think Brentford's pivotal man and a guy that we're going to need to look for, and look to, as I say that phrase again, hammer the hammer, is going to be number 15, Frank Onyeka. He had a very good game against Arsenal. He's come from Midtjylland, who I would imagine Johan Lange knows a bit about him from playing, and obviously they have an agreement with Midtjylland. I think their owners, Brentford owners, own Midtjylland as well, or something like that as well. But he scored goals in that midfield. He's a tough tackler. They call him Frank the Tank. So he gets around in here with the high press. If they do come with a high press, and I think they did come with a high press against Crystal Palace as well, but Crystal Palace have a brutish team at times, so they're not exactly.
But I think what nullified the high press against Crystal Palace, and in fairness, I only saw I think about 7 or 8 minutes of the highlights, was that the goal kicks went long. So that ruled that out very early.
Well, could you imagine if they played this formation, if they played the formation here with the overload to the right, and Emi Martinez just starts pinging them out here to Matty Cash? Maybe we might see something like that, but I don't think we go long. So yeah, that is a bit of a concern because we don't have anyone to go long to. They could go long to Benteke, Crystal Palace could, but we don't really have anyone to go long to, especially if Watkins isn't playing.
Watkins isn't there,
But Frank Onyeka, that's definitely someone, and I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. That's definitely somebody to worry about. Their press comes from Kanyas and Onyeka there, and Mbuema. Mbuema is very good. He's able to move around, very kind of, I'm not going to say very like, kind of like an Ollie Watkins. He's got great work ethic and he just powers on, and he always ends up getting shots away at the edge of the area and hitting posts and stuff like that. And he had a couple of goals last season. But this number 15, if we can quell number 15, and if we can not let Janlet and Norgard are just going to hang back, if we can not let them nullify Buendia or basically just retreat back and stand on Danny Ings' toes, and we're going to have to find a way of making them come out of their shell a small bit, because against Palace they just packed the midfield there as well. But definitely for me, get in on top of Onyeka for first and foremost and early, stop him from having an influence in midfield, and then allow us to get the ball up to the Buendias, to the Ingses, to the El Ghazis, to the Watkinses, to the McGinns of this world, and let's see what we can do, considering we are now the established Premier League team. Exactly.
And as you said, there's goals in this guy as well. I think he has a record of maybe 1-5 or 1-6 with Midtjylland. So we got to be careful of that too, because he has them in his locker. But yeah, the two strikers, while they've worked hard as well, haven't exactly set the world alight. So they'll be trying even harder to do it today, or to do it at the weekend, especially Ivan Toney, who obviously is looking like he could be a player, but it's just it's a big step up no matter what way you look at it, to come through the divisions from, I think it was Peterborough, wasn't it, then to Brentford and then come up into the Premier League. So it'll be tough. It won't be easy for both teams. It's going to be a very hard one to call when we look at it after the team sheet tantrum, but we'll save that till then.
It's very hard to come up through the divisions, but we have a guy who did it last year and got 14 goals in the Premier League. Exeter, Brentford, and upwards. So listen, no, and that's what I mean. It is hard to do it, but we've got someone who did it. Let's hope Ivan Toney doesn't come of age against us and get his first Premier League goal at the weekend. Because look, if we were to call a spade a shovel here as well, Paddy, you know yourself, if you're down on your luck and you're looking to score a goal, who's the best team in the Premier League to play against? Traditionally, Aston bloody Villa at times. So let's not be that team. Let's break that hoodoo that we have of being that team that everybody wants to play when they're down the luck, and let's let Ivan Toney stew over the international break and not concede a goal to him at the weekend. I think that's going to do it, Paddy, for a 20-minute podcast that we swore blind to each other we were only going to do at the very start. We've turned it into a 47-minute podcast, and it is now almost midnight. I've
had a couple of messages, Neil, because we did a podcast on Monday and I didn't go through the lone player, so I'm just going to
absolutely,
very quickly. So we'll start off with Indiana Vasilev. Played 67 minutes for Inter Miami's 3-1 win against Toronto without getting a goal. Louis Barry didn't play in Ipswich. 2-2 draw with MK Dons, was on the bench. We had two loanees playing against each other. Tarek Wright played 68 minutes for Salford, and Kane Kessler played a full game.
They were probably marking each other as well, which
they probably were. Yeah, that would have been a very interesting one to watch. Swindon incidentally won the game 1-0. Finn Azaz played 87 minutes for Newport in a 1-0 win against Tranmere.
Played for them tonight as well in an 8-0 loss against Southampton. So.
And Brad Young was on the bench for Carlisle against Leyton Orient. And Akos Anodi put in a man of the match performance for Sporting Bromsgrove as they beat Needham 1-0. Have I left anyone out? Yes, I probably have.
Yeah, because there's tons of them. You didn't mention anything about Reiki. About he's just gone on loan. Come on, Paddy. So he paid the big bucks for it. Yeah, he went on loan. But I don't think he played. I don't know, did he play? Actually, he probably might have even only gone on loan on Monday. So the start of this week. And you're going to have Wesley now as well, to report on too. So so he will be there too. But no, it's great to see our loanees doing their thing and getting game time and contributing whatever level that they're at the moment. It's Seb Revan. Actually, we didn't hear about Seb Revan at Tranmere. Is he at Tranmere, I think?
Seb Revan's at Grimsby.
At Grimsby.
Who didn't play, their match was called off. Don't ask me why. Very hard to find information about teams when they're at that level.
Yeah. Exactly. No, excellent. That's great to hear, and it's great to hear that at least some of our loanees are getting games, and the other games are being called off. I'm sure Seb Brevin would have played in that game anyway. I think that's going to do it, guys. I think it's going to do it for us tonight. We will be back over the weekend with a few more shows. Check out Twitter for our lineup as to when we will be going live at the weekend. We have an international break coming up after this weekend. We're going to do something for before we go, but we are going to take a few days off over the international break and just recharge the batteries slightly. But we've got a lot of football. There's a lot of football to be played between now and then. There's a lot of things to go down as well in the transfer market. So we will be bringing everything to you before that. But maybe the start of September, we might take a couple of days off just to recharge the batteries. But thanks so much to everybody for everything you do. Really appreciate all the interaction in the podcast. As always, please continue to share, to like, to subscribe to us on YouTube. Really, really love everything that you do for us, and we will continue to knock out these podcasts because the reaction is so great. So that's going to do it. As I say, Brentford at the weekend, coming to Villa Park. If you're lucky enough to get a ticket, I absolutely am envious of you, but I'm also so delighted for everybody that gets to go into Villa Park and to cheer on the Villa boys. Go out there, make all the noise. Make sure you are the 12th man on the field, and let's roar Aston Villa to a victory at the weekend. And all that's left to say is up to Villa.
Up the Villa.